So tonight, I guess, my objective is to relay to those of you that are unaware of the People's Alliance who we are and why we're here and what we want to do. I also want to kind of give a snapshot of the big issues that we're facing in New Brunswick today. Issues that you're probably already aware of, but I think if we really look at it and take an objective viewpoint, I think what's happened in our province is we've allowed maybe partisanship or politics in and of itself to get in the way of common sense and good government. And we're lacking good government today. We're lacking common sense. It's like parties have an agenda, and it doesn't matter whether it makes sense, it doesn't matter whether it's right, it doesn't matter whether it's good for the people or the province overall. This is the party agenda, and they push through with it regardless. And we've seen it over and over and over again. The People's Alliance was formed in 2010, and it was around the time, if you remember, the potential sale of NB Power to Hydro-Quebec. Everybody remember that? That went over well. I remember standing on the front lawn of the legislature back in 2010 fighting to keep our crown utility here in New Brunswick. And I understood to a certain extent the reasoning behind trying to sell it, and the idea was to get money to pay off some of the debt and to release some of the burdens of the debt of NB Power. But at the end of the day, once it's gone, it's gone. That crown jewel of our province is no longer here. So we fought hard against that. But as much as we fought against the sale of NB Power, what we were really formed on was bringing representation back to people. We've lost that in New Brunswick. We've lost that in politics. You know, years ago, I hear stories, because I'm a young guy myself, but I hear stories from my dad and my grandfather that said, years ago when you elected an MLA, they fought hard for you. They represented you. They went to Fredericton and they made sure that your concerns were heard in Fredericton. But you don't have that really anymore today. And you don't have it not because the MLAs are not good people, not that they don't want to fight for you, they do. But we have a system as such today by which it's all about party politics. It's all about what Fredericton dictates to the regions and the areas around New Brunswick. The idea of a true democracy is when you elect an MLA, that MLA goes to Fredericton, and in the legislature, the People's House relays the concerns of the riding in which they represent. But what we have today instead is MLAs coming from Fredericton to the ridings telling us what's going to happen. We've lost our voice and we've lost representation. So that's truly why we were formed. From there, we've worked diligently to craft policies that are financially make sense, that socially make sense, and that can work. It's one thing to have pie-in-the-sky ideas that we'd all like to see, but if it doesn't work in real life, what's the point? So we've got to be able to bridge the gap between reality in our province, the challenges we face, and the ideas or the vision that does reach higher than what we've had before. Because if you don't have a vision, your people will die. Right? The province will die. So we have to have a new outlook. We have to think outside the box. We can't keep doing the same things we've always done. And I'm going to outline a few things that I think have been bad, and that things that we can do differently moving forward. The current form of government, the current system of government, has resulted in the potential almost loss of NB Power to Hydro-Quebec, the all-word forestry deal, which continues to wreak havoc on our smaller mills, our resources, our habitat, and our economy. The two-party system has been controlled by a media monopoly that has resulted in a 9.5% unemployment rate. Now that has also gone up to, it hovers around 10% unemployment in the province. If you look to northern sections, Miramichi North, that can get as high as 18 to 19% unemployment. That's staggering. We have a $347 million deficit this year alone. That means the provincial budget will pay out $347 million more than what it takes in. And that's after your taxes go up in a couple weeks. Does everybody know that? I don't want to ruin your night. but your taxes are going from 13% to 15% HST here on July the 1st. Now, I don't agree with raising taxes. And I don't say that just as a political maneuver. I say it because I really don't believe in raising taxes. We're taxed enough. What I believe in is better management of our tax dollars. What I believe in is smaller government. What I believe in is deregulating some of the things that we have that are needless and counterproductive. What I believe in is ending duality so that we can have streamlined service. Things that make sense rather than just the easy approach of raising taxes. Despite the HST increase, despite the cuts that government pretends to do in certain areas, we are still left with, as taxpayers, as citizens of this province, with a $13.4 billion debt. $13.4 billion debt. I don't want to bore you with numbers tonight, folks, but that's staggering, and that should be concerning to all of us. New Brunswick is not a big province population-wise. We're a small province. We have a population of around 750,000 people. We are, in essence, a small city on a global scale. With the size of our population, we should not have a $13.4 billion debt. We should not be continuing to spend $300 million every single year more than what we're bringing in. If you use the same math and the same logic in your household, how long would it be before you'd be out in the street? If every month you spent out more money than you brought in month after month after month, and that debt that you carry continued to accumulate year after year after year, how long would it be before your financial personally would collapse in on yourself? New Brunswick is in dire straits. Our young people are graduating our schools, universities, and colleges, and they're boarding the first plane to anywhere but here. Our illiteracy rate hovers around 52%. Not because of teachers or schools, but because of lack of government support for those teachers and those schools, while the same government continues to fund segregation by demanding French and English kids travel on the same bus. We rank at the bottom in math and literacy skills. We are witnessing today decades of a failed two-party system that has plunged our communities into poverty and stripped our best and brightest of opportunities to prosper. During the last 6 years as a party, we have been the marginalized voice of reason in a system that enables party agendas while disregarding the voters and taxpayers. We continue to advocate for an end to duality and a more reasoned and common sense approach to bilingualism on a where numbers warrant basis. I do want to be clear, because I know there's a lot of misconception out there. The People's Alliance, as a party, supports bilingualism. We do not support the current ways being implemented. This one-size-fits-all across the province has never worked, it's not working now, and it will not work in the future. As a matter of fact, if you look at bilingualism in the way it's being implemented, they say it's, to protect the Acadian culture, but if you look at the numbers, statistics prove that it's not working for them either. So it's working for no one. And you would think if you've got a system or a policy in place that's not working for anybody, you would seek to change it. But you would swear in this province that everything's honky-dory because no politician, no political party will really come out and talk about these issues. Now, there are a few out there that realize things are bad. They realize that things need to change in terms of the way the system is implemented, in terms of language and culture. And it's nice to see some voices now, sir, but as a party, there's no parties that are willing to tackle this or take this on. Folks, as a party, the People's Alliance has never shied away from taboo or controversial issues, especially when those issues directly affect the taxpayers and our social and economic fabric here in New Brunswick. I firmly believe we cannot allow political correctness to override our ability to debate and to discuss in a rational, reasonable way how we can make our province better. We can't just shy away from these issues no longer. We must talk about them. The first thing that we would do as a party in forming government is we would look at ending corporate welfare. During the last 5 years, you and I, as taxpayers, have forked out $1.29 billion on some type of corporate subsidy. In some ways, we have given out $1.29 billion either through administration, loans, grants, some type of subsidy in an effort to generate business. Now look, if our unemployment rate was 2%, if the average wage in New Brunswick was $19 or $20 an hour, if we were a booming, prosperous economy, I would not speak about corporate welfare. But the fact remains, we are doling out $1.29 billion over the last 5 years, and we still have a 10% unemployment rate. Our wages are still below the national average. Our young people are still leaving the province. Bottom line is, it's not working. So are we foolish enough to just keep doing what we've always done? How many's heard about the Caracat shipyard? I know people are so happy about the fact that almost $38 million is going to go to a boatyard that doesn't build boats. Because that's what we're having. The government has already negotiated, and the previous government was part of those negotiations, I might add, so they're in it together, to give another $30-some million to the Caracat shipyard. Now, just so you know, out of that Caracat shipyard, there's a company from Quebec called Groupe Ocean, which is coming into Caracat to build those ships. Now, how many New Brunswick employees do you think that Quebec company is going to hire when they get to Caracat? They're going to bring them in. There is several $million that the government just gave to IBM. IBM, one of the greatest corporations in the world, one of the most profitable corporations in the world. They've got thousands of employees all across the globe. Our tax dollars went to bring IBM into Fredericton. And I even heard as recently as today is what IBM is struggling with is finding the skilled workforce here in New Brunswick, so they've got to bring people from around outside the country in to fill those jobs. So we're paying for a company to come in into thinking they're going to hire local people, and in essence what they do is they give the big jobs to people outside the country to come in and work here. That's not how I want my tax dollars spent. We have to end corporate welfare. We would end corporate welfare, take the savings from that, reduce the deficit. And one thing that I want to mention that we will do, and we will work towards, is small and medium-sized business. Because I believe, and statistics prove, that small and medium-sized business is the economic backbone of New Brunswick. They've been forgotten, they've been cast aside, and it's all about the big corporate interests now, and it's not working. We've got to get back to small and medium-sized business. So if we took that $300 million that we give out on average every year in corporate subsidies, if we took that $300 million, and out of that $300 million we took simply $9 million, just $9 million out of the $300 million, we could completely eliminate the small business tax in New Brunswick. Gone. If you run a small business in New Brunswick, you would pay no tax. And that gives them incentive to grow. It gives them incentive to hire new employees. Small businesses struggle. You know, the mom and pop shops that have 1 or 2 employees, they work long hours themselves for little pay. But if they had no tax to pay at the end of the year on their business, then maybe they would hire that extra person and give somebody else a job and create and help boost the economy in a small way. So we would do that. We would eliminate the small business tax by ending corporate welfare. How many have heard about the free tuition program? So the government, I don't know where they got the idea, I don't know what kind of thought process went into it. I gotta laugh, the official opposition calls it a plan on the back of a napkin, which is pretty close to what it is. But the idea behind this government program is any household that earns under $60,000, their child or children have free tuition to post-secondary education. And everybody cheered. Everybody was so proud of this program and what the government had did. Free tuition, they said, for any graduates with a household income under $60,000. What they failed to tell the people of New Brunswick was that to pay for the 7,000 students, which it may help, that's the number they threw out, approximately 7,000 students across New Brunswick will benefit from this. To pay for that, they've eliminated the tuition tax rebate for postgraduates. Which means if you've graduated from college or university, you receive a tax credit, and that tax credit could be used every year on your taxes to get money back to pay for the tuition of the money you borrowed to get your education. The stipulation with that tax credit was you have to stay and work in New Brunswick. That makes sense to me, because that tells me as a taxpayer, I have no problem as a taxpayer saying, you know what? This individual spent 4 years at college, 2 years at university, whatever they did, they graduated, they decided to stay in New Brunswick, work, pay taxes, raise a family, keep the economy going in New Brunswick. I have no problem as a taxpayer saying, you know what, give them the tax credit to help pay off their student loan. That makes sense. I've had emails and phone calls from postgraduates that said, you know what, Kris, honestly, this is the straw that broke the camel's back. We talked about moving to Alberta. We talked about going to Saskatchewan for a better life. And we said, no, we love New Brunswick. We're going to stay here. And some of them were getting $4,000 or $5,000 back a year. You know, keeping in mind, it's a significant amount of money for most people, especially postgraduates. So they said, we wanted to stay here. But now that we've lost our tax credit, then it's just the straw that broke the camel's back, and we're gone. I had a buddy that I went to school with my whole life. He's a teacher. His wife's a teacher. They bought a home back in Gemseg. They wanted to come back here and teach and raise a family here in New Brunswick. They come back, and they were back, I think, about 6 months, bought their house, fully, I think he's got a Bachelor of Education, she's the same. They were back about 6, 8 months, and that's when the government decided to cut the teaching positions, I think around 250 teaching positions. So what they did, they boarded the U-Haul, sold their home, and back at Wesleyan. Things have got to change. We've got to do things differently. 42,000 people, postgraduates, will be affected by that free tuition program. 42,000 people are affected by that. There's no incentive in this new program for students to have good grades, high attendance, or even graduate. They can drop out if they want to after 2 years. You're paying for it. Not only is it bad incentive for the taxpayer, but at the end of the day, there's nothing there for them to stay here, right? So even if they follow through and they graduate, they still can leave and they still get their free tuition. The People's Alliance would reinstate those tax credits for those who graduate, work, live, and stay here in New Brunswick. We would increase funding for education, look to models like Alberta, where the money follows the student, giving way to increased standards of education, and allowing private schools, colleges, and universities to grow and prosper right here in New Brunswick. And that's another aspect of it, of that free tuition program. If you live in a household and your household makes $60,000, say your household makes $59,000, you qualify. So you have one child that's getting ready to go to post-secondary education. Your household is $59,000. Your child qualifies for that free education. Your neighbor makes $61,000, has 4 kids. 2 of them are ready to graduate in the next couple of years to go on to post-secondary education. They don't qualify. Makes no sense. It was just a quick scheme to try to buy votes. And I'm telling you folks, if we as a province, here's the thing with politics that I've learned over the last 6 years. If we as people, voters, citizens, taxpayers, if we don't wake up to these things, if we just sit back and fall asleep at the wheel, governments will continue to push these things through. Never read the headlines, always read the fine print. Always, when it comes to government and politics. We would work to increase the standards of education by more funding and seeing that our schools and our post-secondary education institutions are prospering, that we can give a skill set to our people right here that can work and live in New Brunswick. So a few other things we can do, and then we're going to open it up to question and answer period. I've already said we're going to end corporate welfare, savings of approximately $300 million annually, reinvest some of that money into small businesses, take the rest of it and put it towards the annual deficit. We would end duality. We would start with Horizon and Vitalite. A lot of people in New Brunswick don't understand that our government and your tax dollars funds 2 health authorities in this province. One is Vitalite, which is a francophone health authority. That Francophone Health Authority provides bilingual service to any citizen of New Brunswick or anywhere else, for that matter. Anyone who walks into a Vitality Hospital, you receive service in the language of your choice. On the other hand, we have Horizon. Horizon is a bilingual health authority which offers bilingual service to anyone who needs it. So why are we as taxpayers funding two health authorities which essentially do the exact same thing? By merging Vitality with Horizon into one bilingual health authority, you can save estimated between $40 to $60 million every single year. You don't have to close one hospital and you don't have to lay off one nurse to do it. This makes sense. Leroy had mentioned earlier that we're going to be in court tomorrow. We filed a motion with the court in the hearing on the question of the court about dual busing. So there was communities and families in the Rexton area, Rishabakto area, that was putting their children, French and English, on the same bus. God forbid. They were doing it. And it was working for them. You know, as far as we know, there was no complaints, and we're aware of about this system. When the education minister found out that's what they were doing, he immediately put an end to it. And he said, from now on, French kids will travel on the French bus, English kids will travel on an English bus. That's a true story. I know it's laughable, but that's a true story. So, when we created the outcry, we said, this is ridiculous. This is just asinine in 2016 that we still allow for this type of segregation. This is crazy. It's socially unacceptable in any rational, reasonable person's thinking, and it's financially unacceptable with a $13.4 billion debt. People say, well, how do you save money by ending duality? It's common sense. I can pay for two or I can pay for one. Which would I rather do? Buses are no different. So tomorrow we're going to go to the court, and we've already motioned to the court to be a friend of the court to be able to fight this case. The province, and Serge Roussel as Attorney General, has decided to argue in favor of dual busing. Because what they did is they went to the court because they hide behind the Constitution. Anytime you mention anything about tax dollars, duality, anything, it's constitutional. The Constitution requires it. So we said, no, it doesn't. No, the Constitution doesn't require dual busing. So they said, yes, it does. And we'll put the question to the court. Basically, what the government did is they said, we don't want to deal with this. We don't want to make any decisions on this. We'll throw it to the courts. Governments do it all the time. If they don't want to deal with an item, throw it to the courts. So they asked the courts, is dual busing a constitutional requirement in the province of New Brunswick, being a bilingual province? So we're there to say, no, it is not. And we have a precedent set by the Supreme Court of Canada which clearly defined that in PEI, dual busings are not required, okay, based on language. So we're going to fight that, and we're going to fight it hard. In the meantime, the Attorney General is fighting in favor of dual busing. The Attorney General is supposed to be neutral. The Attorney General is an advocate, a neutral, independent advocate for justice in the province of New Brunswick. And even the Chief Justice of the court said, you should not be doing both. You should be neutral, or argue both sides. But the province has refused. So we're going to step in and we're going to argue what we hope is a strong case as to why dual busing is not a constitutional item and why it needs to end in the province of New Brunswick. We will cease the practice of hiring based on language and instead return to employing people who have proven quality and experience. We only need to look at Ambulance New Brunswick as a perfect example, and there's many, believe me, many. But Ambulance New Brunswick, our paramedics, is a perfect example. How many paramedics, unilingual paramedics, cannot get seniority, they cannot get full-time hours, they can't get transfers, they're eliminated from any benefit of being a paramedic because they're unilingual. And as a result, what has happened is they've actually brought in a paramedic from Quebec to fill in the position because according to them, there's not enough bilingual paramedics. Now keep in mind, on every single ambulance, on every bus, there's a translation device. They just pick up a line, they can talk any language in the world, and there'll be somebody there to assist them if they need it. Now folks, I don't think we've got to be unreasonable about this. If you've got an ambulance that's posted up north or along the North Shore or Dieppe area, yes, of course you're going to want some bilingual staff there. There's a higher proportion of Francophone population. It's got to meet the need. I agree with that. But we're talking Charlotte County with less than 2% Francophone population. We're talking about places like Blackville, central New Brunswick, where paramedics are required to be bilingual. It just doesn't make sense. And what's happening is, for confidentiality reasons, I can never give names. I can't give it, I guess I just ask you to take my word for it. But I've gotten an email from a paramedic who's been a paramedic for 20-some years. He applied for a supervisor's position in the central New Brunswick area. This man knows his stuff. He's been a paramedic for a long time. He's a good guy, hard worker, and the job posting come up bilingual. He's not bilingual. He was refused the job as a supervisor in this area, while the job was given to a graduate who is bilingual. So what's happening is we're now losing experience in what could be a life and death situation. We're talking about ambulance, emergency services. They're losing experience for language. Now that's unacceptable to Anglophones, that's unacceptable to Francophones, that's unacceptable to any rational person that stands back and just looks at the bigger picture. And that's the message we're trying to get out. We're in no way trying to take anyone's culture or heritage. In no way are we out to eradicate bilingualism. We're here to say, let's apply some common sense to this issue of language and bring New Brunswick back from the brink of more division, more tension, and more strife.